Buongiorno, good morning, and good afternoon to everyone who is following us from Manila or other nearby time zones. My name is Laurent Franciosi, head of the International Business Support Unit at Cassa Depositi e Prestiti.
Good morning. My name is Riccardo Norati Bianchi, International Affairs Senior Advisor at Cassa Depositi e Prestiti.
We have today the pleasure to welcome you to a webinar organized with ADB, the Asian Development Bank, and dedicated to exploring the new opportunities for Italian companies in the clean energy and transport sectors in emerging Asian markets. Joining us today will be guest speakers from ADB and CDP. Antonella Baldino, Chief International Development Finance Officer of CDP, and Rustam Abdukayyomov, Director of the Procurement Division 2 of ADB, will address their introductory remarks. Right after that, Kee-Yung, Principal Energy Economist, and Michael Agnala, Senior Road Asset Management Specialist, both from ADB, will give us a deep analysis of the clean energy and transport sectors. That presentation will be followed by a focus on the ADB procurement system by Janina Rohr, Principal Procurement Specialist of ADB, at the end of which you will be allowed to send your questions through the Q&A tab window, telling us to which speaker the question is addressed to. You can find the Q&A tab window on the right-hand corner of your screen. Next, we will have a presentation of the financial instruments that CDP provides to Italian and local companies by Giulio Dalmagro, Head of Development Financing of CDP. Finally, we will be joined again by our experts from ADB and CDP to answer your questions through a Q&A session moderated by Riccardo.
Yes, speaking of interaction, during the webinar, we will launch a few polls we invite you to answer. The result will be presented live, so do not hesitate to give us your answers. In the first poll, we would like to ask you if your company is already active in the emerging Asian markets, and if so, in which country? On the right-hand corner of your screen, you will have the different options you can choose from.
Now, joining us from Rome is Antonella Baldino, Chief International Development Finance Officer of CDP. Buongiorno Antonella, un piacere averti con noi. Prego, a te la parola.
Good morning and good afternoon to all. I'm very pleased to welcome you to this event arising from the collaboration between the Asian Development Bank and Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, the Italian Development Finance Institution. I would like to thank ADB for their interest and availability in organizing this webinar aimed at promoting opportunities for the Italian companies in emerging Asian markets in such key sectors as clean energy and transport. I hope it will represent the first milestone for a long and rewarding partnership between our institutions. Two institutions that operate internationally in the development finance sector with a common goal: to promote sustainable growth in emerging economies by leveraging on local development, business competitiveness, and high-impact initiatives. Traditionally, CDP, in its role of the Italian national promotional institution, has mainly had a national focus and a national footprint on its activities, with the mission of fostering the development of our country. Today, however, we are increasingly concentrating our effort on international markets. The rationale behind our strategy on international markets is, on one hand, to contribute to the sustainable development of partner countries, increasing their prospective interest in trading and partnering with Italian companies, and on the other hand, to strengthen global value chains, leveraging on Italian expertise, the excellence of our products and supply chains abroad. In this trend toward a more comprehensive strategy related to international markets, the most recent evolution of CDP mission is related to development finance and international cooperation. In fact, since 2019, CDP has formally established a new pillar in its strategy related to the role of the Italian International Financial Institution for Development Cooperation. In this new role, we can finance both local private sector and sovereign and sub-sovereign entities, not only focusing and using our own funds, but also leveraging on blended finance solutions. In this enhanced new role and with these new tools, CDP can support Italian companies beyond the national boundaries by accompanying them in high potential markets with attractive investment opportunities. Local context entails new challenges that should be undertaken with suitable partners such as CDP and Adb, with a strong local expertise, a solid financial dimension, and a leading role on impact finance. In our business model for the private sector, we see two pillars: targeting high potential geography and selecting high impact initiative, where sustainability plays a central role, representing the cornerstone of which we base our action. Two pillars that are well represented in the emerging Asian markets, a region that offers a great opportunity for the private sector. Our partnership with Adb goes in this direction, a collaboration that aims at promoting a sustainable development growth and creating a positive business environment for Italian companies in emerging Asian markets, with a particular focus on clean energy and transport projects, areas of excellence for the Italian economy. Our partnership with Adb aims to build a bridge between the international growth ambition of Italian companies and the region's development needs, an infrastructure that can be the entry point for companies looking to this market, where a solid knowledge of the area and the partnership with local actors can really make the difference. So I thank you for your attention. Session.
Grazie mille, Antonella. Thank you very much, Antonella. It was a pleasure to have you here. And I would like also to take this chance to thank you and all your department for ideating this event. And now I have the pleasure to introduce Rustam Abdukayyumov, Director of the Procurement Division 2 of Adb, live from Manila. Good afternoon, Mr. Abdukayyumov. In a while, we will see you on our LED wall. Here you are. Thank you for being here with us. And the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, and good morning to our colleagues in Italy, and good day to our colleagues in Manila and elsewhere. It's my pleasure to welcome you all to this virtual business opportunity seminar, and I would like to thank our host organization, CDP, for helping us to organize this event. As you know, Adb is a multilateral development bank whose aim is to improve the livelihood of developing member countries, and our portfolio is continuously growing. We prepare new type of projects in many different countries. So let me share some statistics. So current Adb's sovereign operations portfolio is about 100 billion. It means this is the value of all ongoing projects financed by Adb under government guarantees. In addition to that, we have about 14 billion of non-sovereign portfolio operations, which means these are without government guarantees, and we have a separate private sector operations department within Adb who provides loans without government guarantees. Probably you also are aware that last year Adb has announced a new package of $20 billion available to our developing member countries to support their efforts in fighting the pandemic and strengthening the health systems. 13 billion out of this 20 billion has been already committed, and there are many projects which are being implemented to help all these countries to mitigate the impact of the pandemic. Another part of our kind of statistics is that, for example, last year, ADB provided 200 million US dollars for consulting services which are administered directly by ADB. This means ADB does recruitment of consultants and manages those contracts. We finance close to 4,000 contracts with individual consultants in any given year, and about 200 plus contracts with the firms. But in addition to ADB administered consulting services, there are many consulting opportunities under loans and grants which are managed by our borrowers. And since ADB portfolio is growing and there are more complex projects are prepared, there is increasing need from the borrowers to have good, very strong civil work contractors and firms in the consulting services industry. Usually these opportunities are advertised on ADB website, and large contractors, civil work contractors, they're closely monitoring that, and they have actually offices in many countries where they believe it's a big market for their services. However, in the consulting industry, of course, the number of firms is much, much bigger, and not all of them would have representative offices in all our member countries. So therefore, we believe these kind of business opportunity seminars provide you an opportunity to learn where to find these kind of advertisements and how to prepare for these contracts. I also wanted to say that in many countries, borrowers' need shifts from consulting support to so-called traditional project implementation to more technically complex areas such as detailed engineering design, procurement of large infrastructure contracts, and also construction supervisions where consultants act as engineers. Also, the recent trend in the consulting market, at least under ADB financed projects, shows that due to more complex assignments for consultants, there are more frequent associations of different consulting firms before they submit their bids. So even large, very well-known international firms prefer to associate with some other firms to increase the chances of winning contracts. And also, those of you who have prior experience working with ADB, you may remember that until 2019, every year ADB used to conduct so-called business opportunities fair in Manila. It was a very big event, and it was a good opportunity to meet with the ADB staff in person and basically establish a good network and learn how ADB is doing business. So our last business opportunities fair was conducted in 2019 and was attended by more than 1,000 participants. We were planning to do a similar kind of event in 2020, not in Manila, but we wanted to go to one of our regions where we operate so that we provide more chances for local companies to participate in that. Unfortunately, because of COVID and all the travel restrictions, we could not do this, and we shifted to so-called virtual format, right? And last year we have already provided 34 business opportunity seminars in different countries, and we are happy to see that there is increasing interest from business community from different countries, and we will continue with this format until everything goes back to normal, and then we could resume our face-to-face events. Today, I understand that your request, we will focus our discussions on operations covering energy, especially clean energy and transport sectors. So these two sectors still represent the majority of ADB portfolio, and there is continuous demand in these two sectors. We will also have a presentation from our procurement processes and how to find the business opportunities. And our aim is to continue collaboration with the business communities, despite of the challenges of COVID or other impediments. So we value our cooperation because we know that Project preparation and project implementation largely depends on inputs from other players, not only ADB and the government, but contractors and consultants. So we hope you will find this event useful, and you will learn better on how to find business opportunities, but also the most important maybe for many of you is I hope this seminar will help you win contracts under ADB projects. So I will stop here and wish you very successful deliberations. And now I will hand over back to our organizers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Abdukayumov, for your introductory statement. And we will see each other at the end of this webinar for the Q&A session. See you later. So now I would like to go ahead and see with you the results of the first survey. Let's discover together. We asked you if your company is already active in emerging Asian markets, and we can see that 84% of the audience is present in the region, and even 1/3 in more than one country. And specifically, we can see that the greatest part is working with China, Thailand, Philippines, and also the other country with lower volumes. That's very interesting to see how you are working and what is the part and the margin for improvements. Before moving on, I would like to ask you a second question. What has been your public procurement experience with the international financial institutions? Just like before, you will have different options to choose from on the right-hand corner of your screen. Great. Now, I say we enter the first deep dive of this webinar. According to ADB forecasting, and Asia and the Pacific's energy demand is projected to double by 2030. Also, according to the Development Bank of Singapore and the United Nations Environment Inquiry, it's estimated that the size of the green finance opportunity in the Asian bloc will reach $3 trillion by 2030. Also, according to ADB, every year about 44 million people in Asia are being added to the urban population. These figures shouldn't surprise us, since 80% of the new economic growth will be generated in urban economies. These trends are placing an enormous pressure on transport mobility in urban areas. And now let's see together a video to see the commitment of ADB to solve such complexity in that part of the world.
Asia and the Pacific is the fastest growing region in the world. Yet, every third person lives on about $3 per day. And there's a vast infrastructure gap of at least $1.7 trillion per year. Bringing a better life to those people by helping to build Asia and the Pacific has been at the core of ADB's work for more than 50 years. But we must embrace change to continue promoting growth and resilience as the region matures. Rapid urbanization, climate change, technology changing the nature of work, and young populations in some countries and others swiftly aging. While working to bridge that huge infrastructure gap will remain our priority, investments in health, education, and social protection will all increase. In the coming decade, our operational priority areas will be reducing poverty and inequality, tackling climate change, promoting gender equality, boosting rural development, making cities more livable, strengthening governance, and fostering regional cooperation and integration. Promoting these in Asia and the Pacific will not be just about financing. A growing part of our work will be sharing our practical knowledge, research, and policy advice with our developing members. Because our resources are limited, helping meet the region's needs will mean forging innovative ways of financing. We will explore new commercial and concessional funding sources and nurture more public-private partnerships. Working smarter means acknowledging our region's diversity. Small island states, as well as those impacted by conflict, have unique needs. Upper middle income countries have their own specific development priorities. We must respond to these too. Persistent inequality within states means our focus will be on areas that lag behind wealthier places. Contributing in all these areas is hugely challenging, but we've set ourselves some targets to measure success. At least 75% of our operations will promote gender equity by 2030. Not less than 75% of operations will support climate change mitigation and adaptation by 2030. And the private sector will make up a third of our operations by 2024. We are forging even stronger links with our members, donors, and development partners. Let us work together to build a prosperous, inclusive, resilient, and sustainable Asia and the Pacific.
The pandemic has effectively altered all our lives, leaving us weakened yet resilient. It has left us isolated for more than 1 year, yet together, and it's time to restart finding new sustainable solutions to a rapidly changing world. Allow me to say that ADB and CDP share the same vision. With us today to talk about the ADB commitment in the clean energy and the transport sectors are Kee-Yung Nam, Principal Energy Economist, and Michael Agnala, Senior Road Asset Management Specialist. Let's start with the deep dive on clean energy with Mr. Kee-Yung Nam, live from Vienna. Good afternoon, Mr. Nam, or good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Kee-Yung Nam, working in the energy sector group of the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department of the ADB. And I would like to, on behalf of the energy sector group, I would like to thank to the CDP for the opportunity to present about on the clean energy development and operation in ADB. So I will just provide a brief overview, more or less, on the clean energy, or in general, and more focus on the clean energy development that we have in the energy sector group. So, which is it doesn't move. I cannot move to the next. Oh yeah, it does. Sorry. So all this ADB energy sector operations are led by these 3 guiding principles, so to say. They should be aligned or in response to the global commitments to the universal access and climate action, including Sustainable Development Goal 7, in particular on the energy access by 2030, and SDG Goal 13, as well as the Paris Agreement, aligned with NDCs, nationally determined contributions. And on the other side, from the we are looking at from the ADB Strategy 2030 with its 7 operational priorities. So the guiding principle, the first one is that we are our focus on the increasing the deployment of the renewable energy and energy efficiency. And second guiding principle is that integration of the advanced or innovative technologies, as well as innovative business model and financing instruments relevant to the specific to the technology or even the business models. And then third principle is that we are promoting or supporting the creating, enabling regulatory framework for effective market and sector development in terms of the market reform, institutional setups in the developing member countries. So these are the 7 operational priorities, which is more applied with the thematic areas rather than energy sector specific. But on the left-hand side of that, we see, through the clean energy development, how we can, so to say, contribute to the, all these 7 operational priorities. So, for instance, obvious clean energy operations or investment will, have to tackle the climate change and, in terms of the climate mitigation financing as well as climate adaptation part, but also the, distributed or decentralized renewable system for the, making cities more livable, and of course the, distributed renewable energy system using the, even including the energy efficiency to see the promoting rural development, food security, and also the regional cooperation integration as well as the governance. In terms of overall, from over the past 10 years of the energy sector lending, we are taking that like a, average share. In general, that, from the ADB lending, roughly about 22% is the energy sector lending or energy sector operations. And from this total energy sector operations, it is divided into mainly in 2 areas. One is the clean energy. The other one is the transmission and distribution, and slightly the others, but it's more or less equally that, we are doing roughly 50% of each on that one. From the clean energy, we are again, put it into distributing into the 3 areas, but mostly in the two for the climate mitigation financing. We're looking at the 60% is about the promotion of the renewable energy. And then we're looking at, the rest is more or less energy efficiency, and very little on the fuel switching, which you will see very little from 2021. But we might look at more on the energy efficiency aspects. And from the energy efficiency, we've been, over the past 10 years that, our focus was very much on the supply side rather than demand side. So that, from 2021, for the next, midterm, I would say we will focus more on the, demand side of management as well. In terms of the, we're looking at this is similar to what I showed in the previous slides, that, what is the clean energy investment that we do. So we are having for the energy sector lending in general, into last year, we had a 4.2 billion. And from this 4.2 billion, we had a 1.9 billion of almost 2 billion on the clean energy investment that we have done. So since 2016, when the climate mitigation financing is in place from the ADB operation side, or a little earlier, that we are keeping clean energy investment roughly on the 2 billion side, and then we are promoting to increase that more in the near future. By sub-region, because we do it in the last year, how we did was we have a 5 operational department, and we have 1 private sector operation department. You see on the right column, the last year we had a 4.2 billion. And then it is major investment last year was more on the South Asia, and followed by the Southeast Asia. And as you can see from there is that in terms of the climate financing, because its nature of, so to say, in more of this clean energy development in the energy sector is more on the mitigation side. So, adaptation is very, very little, but we are also looking at more the adaptation, climate financing as well. So, in the future that we'll see how this adaptation can also, get increased, so to say, in our portfolio as well. We are measuring from internally outcomes from our operations in terms of the energy access that we see that, we have a total 2 billion in energy access in 2020 and 10.3 billion cumulative from 2008 to 2020. in terms of energy access point of view. That includes to the certain extent on the T&D as well, transmission and distribution. And it provided energy access. It's not necessarily only the electricity, but we are, looking at other clean heating and cooling, cooking as well. But little, it's at the moment it's early stage, but we provided energy access to 10.3 million households in 2020, and overall in cumulative 30.6 million households that we have this energy access from the 2008 to 2020. And major of this was from the T&D, transmission and distribution, for the, providing the energy access. Another outcome that we look at mostly on the, more specific to the climate impact of the energy projects. So, we had last year 6.9 million tons of CO2 equivalent per year. We had emission reduction, so to say, and then, assessing the climate change impact in terms of the renewable side of that, energy efficiency. We had a 3.4 gigawatt additional renewable energy capacity installed, and we don't have proper, the final data for the 2020 for the electricity generation, because that includes also investment that was approved and committed, but we don't know exactly the number that how much that was generated. So in 2019, we had an 8.3 terawatt hour per year of the renewable energy electricity generation, and then we had a 1.1 terawatt hour per year of the electricity savings. If we look at the energy sector group where we are from, it is not only the, we are more on the providing the technical and advisory support to the operation department, which I mentioned in the previous slide, with 5 operation department, as well as the private sector operation department. So, we are doing also the knowledge work, producing the handbooks and some of case studies or articles, and then guide notes. So we had several ones that we have already published, and then we are also working on 2 to 3 publications this year to be published. And of course the technical notes, OPAT, and blogs that is that the emerging issue comes, and then or something that we publish. And obviously the workshop, forum, and collaboration in terms of this dissemination activity or collaboration with other partners, so to say. And one of the main thing that, major kind of workshop is the Asia Clean Energy Forum, which we are organizing every year, which we had on the 14th till 18th of June last month, where we attracted, there was something like over 3,500 participants. And then, projected energy sector lending, we see it this year and the next year, with our focus is that, we are looking at about the, this is the kind of a summary again that which I show that, but the thing is what we are looking at is it will remain almost the same level that, but, we are looking at 4.2. And then in the next 2 years that, we are projecting average energy sector lending is about 5 billion. And we would like to increase a little bit more to the more than, 2 billion in the clean energy development. It will be, about, we suppose that's 50%. That's where we are working on. And out of this is about, we would like to also attract private sector investment. So, which we would like to see about 30% or 20-30% coming from the private sector involvement as well. And in terms of the direct private sector lending or through the, public-private partnership agreement. These are the very indicative clean energy projects that this is, I'm saying this is indicative because this is the, our work program and budget framework. So it can be subject to change it or depending on, and then also depends on the needs that it will, change it, update it. But this is what I try to show is roughly for the next 2 years that what the operation department have provided. So in the different region like Afghanistan, renewable energy, Bangladesh, and we look at some of the South Asian countries, and then pretty much on the Southeast Asia country. Some of this two pipeline which we have it is in the PRC in China, and there are some Mongolia as well, and then some of them are from the Pacific Island countries that we are doing that. From the way forward, how we're doing from our strategic point of view, that we'll further increase the clean energy investment to develop and demonstrate, because we are also conducting the very small scale of the pilot projects that we are also conducting already, the pilot projects on the hybrid renewable to renewable hybrid system with a small solar and small runnable river type in Georgia now ongoing. So we are looking at that kind of things also to replicate or scale up, and then not only restricted to the all types of the renewable technology that we are looking at, and then also other multi-sector approach that we do. It is not only the let's say in the electricity supply. More we are looking at on the cooling as well, so cooling storage, cold storage for the agricultural perishable goods. So we are doing one pilot projects of the cold storage in the Philippines as well. We are conducting that, and then also in terms of the technology that we are looking at more flexible, resilient, and smart energy system using the more intelligent ICT and digital applications. Smart system, smart grid system, and then energy storage as well as, and then the energy efficiency from the on the T&D subsectors as well. So, yeah. So and then currently it is just for your information that it will not change much of that, but the thing is that we'll focus more on the clean energy with the climate change considerations that we are currently developing, drafting the energy policy, and they are on the 5 guiding principles. One is the energy security. The other one is the kind of sustainable, resilient energy future that we'll look at, and then more on the governance aspects, that engaging with institutions and framing policy reforms to enabling the environment, in particular for the renewable energy as well as energy efficiency, and promoting regional cooperation to enhance energy security, and then cross-sector operations to maximize the development impact. So it will include, so to say, the energy water nexus, energy transport nexus in terms of the e-mobility, and then also we'll look at, as I said, energy nexus with food, agriculture, and health as well. So with that, I will stop my presentation here, and I'm happy to get any questions that related to the clean energy operations in ADB, and I will provide a response to that, answer to the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nam. It was very interesting to hear from you about the clean energy projects for the next years, and I hope that this will stimulate our audience. And we will see you later for the Q&A session.
Sure.
See you later. Bye. Thank you. And I remind our audience that at the end of the webinar, Mr. Nam and Mr. Abdukayumov and all the other experts speaking later will join us to answer all your questions. Now I'm happy to see which valuable insights we will receive regarding the transport sector. Mr. Michael Agnala, Senior Road Asset Management Specialist of ADB, is here to tell us about it. In a while, we will see Mr. Agnala on our LED wall. Hello, Mr. Agnala.
Hello, good morning to you.
I'm very glad to see you, and so we are ready to hear about the transport sector. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. It's really my pleasure to join you today and give you a brief snapshot of the transport sector portfolio. So my name is Michael Antonella. I am Senior Road Asset Management Specialist at the Transport Sector Group in Adb, and we sit within the Sustainable Development and Climate Change Department, which is the knowledge department in Adb. So what I will talk to you about today is essentially provide you with a very brief snapshot of the transport sector portfolio, how it has progressed previously, and what we see the portfolio going forward in the next few years. And later on, I will also then highlight to you some of the projects that are upcoming, and then finish off with some takeaway messages that I believe would be of interest to you. So firstly, as you will see from the screen there, the transport sector has been one of the largest sectors of the Asian Development Bank support over the past 3 decades, covering about 1/3 of ADB's operations. Now, investments in transport grew from an average of just under 900 million per year in the 1990s to an estimated 5 billion in the next 2 years. So it's been a significant growth in investments, as you can see from those graphs that are being shown there. You'll also see that non-urban roads still is the dominant sector, despite a decreasing proportion of investments. So if you can see from those graphs, in the 1990s, 72% of transport sector investments were roads, essentially non-urban roads. That was maintained pretty much in the 2000s. Then in 2010s, it started to decrease. And we now see a decreasing trend where over the next 2 to 3 years, we expect that roads investments will be about 50% of transport sector investments. It's still very significant. But that trend shows the demand that we are receiving from our developing member countries. Now, the other thing that I'd like to point out is that investment in rail transport has doubled since the 1990s. So in the 1990s, it was about 11% of transport sector investments, and right now, we're expecting it to be around about 21%. And this is expected to grow as well. Another interesting aspect to point out there is urban transport, which has seen the most significant growth, particularly over the last decade, almost doubling. So from 13% in the 2010s and coming to about 20%. And part of this is as a result of what we're seeing to be a high tendency of rural to urban migration in Asia and the Pacific, which is driving up the demand for urban transport. Now, other sectors in transport that I'd like to mention includes air transport. We also are involved in water transport, particularly around about maritime infrastructure and logistics around water transport as well as multimodal logistics. Next slides, please. So now I'd just like to provide you with a snapshot of examples of upcoming transport assistance, particularly in South Asia. So we will have, for example, quite a number of mass transit and urban transport opportunities that we see coming up. Now, these are not firm opportunities, they could change, but it's what we have got in our work and budget framework. So you'll see there that the expectation is for a metro project in Bangalore, which is an urban transport project, and also a mass transit opportunity. Another similar project is in Chennai, again in China, in India, Chennai Metro, which is also an urban transport and a mass transit. Then there's the Dhaka Metro in Bangladesh, and then the Delhi Meerut Rapid Transit Systems, which is actually an ongoing project, but is financed under the multi-tranche financing facility. So we expect other tranches of finances to be coming up. There are other opportunities in Karachi, where we expect to implement a mass transit systems. Now, the types of assistance that will be required for these projects will include project preparation, so the technical assistance required to actually prepare these projects so that they're ready, then the actual planning and the design of those projects, the civil works, electrical and mechanical works, there will be rolling stock activities to be done, and also environment and social sector protection, which is quite important for these types of projects. Next slide, please. So another upcoming assistance in South Asia, particularly in rail, is that I would like to highlight is in Bangladesh, where we're expecting 3 opportunities, which are part of the South Asia Sub-Regional Economic Cooperation Corridor. So these are the Tongoi to Akura Dual Gauge Project, the Laksam, Chattogram, and then the Chittagong, Cox's Bazar railway projects. And the typical assistance that will be provided here will include building the capacity of governments and institutions to ensure that they're ready to develop and manage these projects, providing technical assistance, as well as system improvements and the civil works and rolling stock. Next slide, please. Now, to a different type of assistance. So in India, we are currently preparing one of the most novel type of road safety assistance we have done in ADB. Traditionally, support for road safety in ADB has been through infrastructure projects. But this has tended not to have the highest impact. And what we now intend to do is to mainstream what we call a safe systems approach to road safety. And we know that road safety is really one of the big development issues, particularly with respect to transport in Asia. And just to give you the context, from estimates in literature, countries lose about 3 to 5% of GDP per year as a result of people dying from road crashes or being seriously injured, in which case they may be disabled and not able to provide for their families for a long time. And in terms of sheer numbers alone, every year in Asia and the Pacific, 760,000 people die on the roads of our developing countries. So really this for ADB is a very important issue to deal with. So this project is actually a sector level project which uses a financing modality called results-based lending, where ADB intends to provide assistance, provide a loan to the government of India of about $500,000 US. And then the government of India will allocate some of this financing to states on the basis of achieving specific results. So it's results-based. And the funding will only be used to address road safety issues that are non-infrastructure. So issues like enabling institutions, ensuring that there's proper monitoring, making sure that the data is good in order to be able to design policies, amongst others. There are also a number of road projects in South Asia and also other regions in Adb. So, for example, economic corridors in India, we have a number of them. And then within the South Asia sub-regional economic cooperation corridors, again, there's a huge portfolio of road investments that are included there. And by the way, I encourage you to go and look at these portfolios, for example, in the websites for SASEC, where you can actually view them and be able to look at them. Next slide, please. Now, we also support other types of assistance in the Pacific, for example. For example, maritime assistance. So some of the projects that we're expecting in that region includes the Sustainable Climate Change Resilience Connectivity Port Upgrading Project in Nauru. In the Solomon Islands, we expect to implement a project on land and maritime connectivity under the multi-tranche financial facility. And then in Vanuatu, we're in the progressing recommendations of an inter-island shipping support project. And this project includes building port infrastructures, but actually even enabling institutional development to manage the operations of the shipping within the islands there and developing capacity as well. And there are quite a number of road projects as well happening in the Pacific. And one of the big ones is in the PNG, so Papua New Guinea, which is a Sustainable Islands Highways Multi-Tranche Financing Facility. Next, please. All right, so some key messages I would like to leave you with. So in terms of subsector focus, you'd have seen from the graphs that I showed earlier that there has been a decreasing trend in road investment. But we still expect roads to still be important, particularly to address issues around connectivity, asset management. So most countries in Asia and the Pacific already, particularly in Asia actually, already have large existing road networks. So the aim will be how will they manage this in a sustainable manner going forward? And then road safety that I've already pointed out. Rail investments will remain strong, particularly around improving national rail systems, as well as institutions and operations. And in urban transport, the focus going forward will be on transport services, some urban infrastructure as well as improving non-motorized transport systems. But I'd also like to highlight the changing demands from our clients. So what we're seeing increasingly now from our clients is more demand for system level assistance. So some kind of network level support for transport investments. And this is really key, particularly to address issues like climate change, drive efficiencies, and add more value to transport investments. We'll also put a lot of attention going forward to increase private sector support, as well as broader use of financial services to meet demands. And this is because there's not enough funding available to address the infrastructure gap, particularly transport infrastructure gap in Asia and the Pacific. So to provide you some context, Adb estimates that transport investment to the tune of 500 billion per year is required over the next 10 years to address transport infrastructure gap in Asia and the Pacific. And like I showed earlier on, our expectation is that we'll be providing about 5 billion only. So 100 times less than what is required. So really this big gap will need to be filled by the private sector, and we are working a lot to encourage private sector support in the sector. So I'll stop here for now. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be happy to respond to your questions later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Antonella, for your presentation, and it was very interesting. We keep in our mind the focus on the subsectors, the changing of the demand of clients, and the new attention also for the private investment. And so thank you, and we will see you later as well for the Q&A session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And from this moment on, you can start sending your questions through the Q&A tab that you will find once again on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please tell us who you would like to address your question to, and in this way we make sure you get the best possible answer. In case some of you have already sent us some questions, do not worry. We have received them and we will do our best to answer all of them. I would like to welcome now Ms. Janina Rohr, Principal Procurement Specialist of Adb, live from England. We will now provide more details about the Adb procurement system. Hello, Ms. Rohr.
Thank you so very much, and good morning, everybody. Good afternoon to colleagues in Italy and in Manila. And it's my pleasure to be today with you in this business opportunity seminar to walk you through the main features of the procurement strategy and procurement framework of Adb, where you can find business opportunities and some statistics also on which developing member countries or which regional countries are getting the contracts. And importantly, I will give you some tips on do's and don'ts. So what you really need to be careful when you are preparing bids or technical proposals in competitions to win projects with Adb. So as I said, I will walk you through briefly through what is Adb and its operations, some statistics on the top suppliers, contractors, and consultants, both across the bank and suppliers and consultants from Italy. Then we go to the second phase of this presentation, which is the Adb Procurement Framework. So what is our procurement strategy? What are the procurement methods, the procurement procedures that are always public information? And I will show you where you can go in the Adb website to download everything that you need to be familiar with Adb procurement policy and regulations. And the last part of this presentation is I'll guide you and show you where to find the actual business opportunities. So where are in the website the advertisements, the invitation for bids, the request for proposals, the expressions of interest, and also where are the contract award notices, so you can see who is getting what in which country under which sector of the Adb finances. So now let's start with the presentation. This is Adb, founded in 1966, headquartered in Manila, Philippines. We have 68 members, 49 regional members, and 19 non-regional members. Italy is in the non-regional members, along with other European countries. And we borrow to 41 members, which are the developing member countries in 5 regional departments: the Central West, the South Asia Regional Department, Southeast Asia, where Philippines is, East Asia, China and Mongolia, and the Pacific region, which is composed by 15 small Pacific Island countries. How do we support our member countries? We work with the private sector, we work with NGOs, CBOs, with foundations, with academia, with think tanks, and with other donors and multilateral organizations. And as my director Rustan said, the main instruments that with which we work are sovereign loans and grants, technical assistance projects where it's our money and we provide this technical assistance to our borrowers, and in the private sector with equity and guarantees. And that is different from the public procurement or the sovereign operations, loans and grants. The 2020 data says that the biggest ADB borrowers were India, China, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Indonesia. So those were the largest portfolio that offer more business opportunities for the private sector. This is in figures. So about $80 billion is our portfolio, distributed in the 5 regional departments that I mentioned. And you can see in the right side column how it evolved the portfolio in 2019 and 2020. And though transport and energy sectors are the largest sectors and still are the largest sectors in the ADB envelope, in 2020, both decreased, most probably because of the impact of the pandemic, but still there are huge sectors that offer big opportunities for you. And this data is referential only because if you are interested in working in the private sector, non-sovereign products, so then we also have a very growing envelope to work with the private sector, especially with PPP operations and that kind of projects with equities, guarantees, and other debt securities. Now, some statistics about which member states are getting the contracts for goods equipment. So as you can see, the last 4 years, there you have the countries that are getting the largest number of contracts. So in 2020, it's India, China, Indonesia, Turkey, and Hong Kong. For works and large infrastructure plant projects, power plants, water treatment plants, etc. So this is the large infrastructure, civil works and works contracts. Still, it's India, China, Philippines, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. In 2018, we have some non-regional countries like Germany, and also in 2017, Korea, but few projects. And in consulting services, there is another type of market that is getting the business opportunities, which normally is non-regional. So you have the US, Korea, Indonesia, India, Australia, France, Germany, Great Britain, etc. The top suppliers of goods 2017-2020, there you have the list of the 5 companies, suppliers that got the largest number of contracts and the value amount of those contracts. And the same information for civil works and infrastructure projects. The last 4 years, you have the list there, the number of contracts and in terms of value of those contracts. Also for consulting services and consulting services firms, not individuals, there you have the information of who is getting the largest number of contracts and the amount of those contracts. In terms of Italy, the 5 top contractor suppliers involving the procurement of goods, works, and related services in the last 5 years, 2016 and 2020, you have the list of the private sector entities there and the sectors that Italian companies had won contracts for: energy, for transport, and for water and other urban services and municipal services, and the value of those contracts. And in terms of consulting services from Italian consulting firms and individual consultants, there you have the list of who are getting the contracts, always through competitive bidding in all types of procurements, because our preferred method of procurement is the open competitive bidding, and we will talk more about that. Now we go to the procurement strategy. So why you would like to pursue business opportunities with ADB? First of all, because we assure the payment of those contracts after the contract conditions have been complied with. The government requests us to proceed with the payment. So this is an assurance for you that your payments will be processed in due time. As the previous speakers referred to, Asia is the fastest growing economy in the world. So this is the gateway to so many business opportunities that you can compete for, and in multiple sectors. As I said, the open competitive bidding is the preferred method, and we have internationally accepted fair procurement procedures and our policy. And on the other hand, we also offer a strong integrity oversight. So my department, our main role is to oversee that the borrower complies with the procurement arrangements of the projects while doing the procurement, and the recommendation of award meets the procurement requirements of the loans or grants. This is to show you the Adb Project Cycle. So first of all, with each borrowing country, we defined a country partnership strategy, and then it goes down, cascades down to the concept formulation of each of the projects that are included in that CPS and COBP. Then it goes to the actual preparation of the projects, and our speakers also referred to that, to the feasibility studies and detailed design, etc. And then the loan and grants are approved, negotiated, signed, and become effective. And in the meantime, the bidding, the tender documents have been formulated and might also have been tendered already. So the bids are received, are floated to the market, the bids are submitted or technical proposals, then are evaluated, and recommendation of award is processed, and a contract is awarded. So then it's the implementation of those inputs, civil works, the provision of those equipment, or consulting services, and then we go to the final stage of the project cycle, which is the evaluation of if the project achieves its expected outputs and outcomes. So what is important in this diagram is that you see the arrows, the gray marked arrows. You see that in every single stage of the project cycle, we hire individual consultants or consulting firms, or during the implementation of the project, the big chunk of the activities are carried out, performed by consultants, contractors, EPC contractors, suppliers, and in the last stage also consultant firms and individuals. So to a greatest extent, ADB relies on the private sector to actually implement the projects successfully. As I said, we finance the procurement of goods, machinery, equipment, computers, furniture, hospital. Now during the pandemic, all sorts of COVID-19 related equipment and supplies. In civil works, we finance the rehabilitation or new roads, railways, bridges, irrigation canals in the rural areas, the rehabilitation or new construction of schools, health centers and sub-health centers, power plants, big infrastructure projects like power plants, pump station, water treatment plants, heating plants, airports, especially in the Pacific Island countries, that they depend so much on the airport transportation. And also now it's an interesting project of airports being formulated in Nepal. In terms of consulting services, pre-feasibility studies, site supervision, detailed design, construction supervision, project preparation, knowledge project, and the project implementation support to the executing and implementing agencies, and also non-consulting services, which are service, training, etc. We have now 2 procurement frameworks still. As of 1st July 2017, ADB publish its new procurement framework and the procurement policy and procurement regulations for ADB borrowers. But we still keep a number of projects that follow probably most of you will be familiar with the Procurement Guidelines 2015 and the Consulting Services Guidelines 2013. So these two regimes will continue until we expect 2023, 2024, that the last projects that follow the all procurement regime will close. And then only the 2017 procurement policy and regulation will apply. And what is new about this procurement policy? As Rustan mentioned, so this is a policy that shifts from a rule-based to a fitness for purpose approach. So to principles-based approach. Where the formulation of the procurement arrangements for the projects are designed thinking about the fitness for the project. That these procurement arrangements have to be fit for the purpose of achieving the outputs and the outcomes of the project. In the slide in your computers, you have the 6 principles of the procurement. These are the core principles, and the 2017 procurement policy are the quality and value for money. And this tells you that the procurement framework ADB is targeting to quality, to technical performance and compliance of the inputs that the ADB projects finance. It's important that you bear in mind that ADB is not a party to the contractual agreements between the borrower, executing implementing agency, and yourselves, the suppliers, consultants, contractors. ADB finances the projects and we oversee the implementation of the projects, but we are not party to the projects. The borrower, executing implementing agency, is the sole responsible to procure and to run the tender processes. This is a list. You will have the link to in our website where you can download all procurement documents on pre-qualification, the procurement of goods, works, plant, all our standard bidding documents. You can download from the website, and really in the area that you are interested, you can see what are the conditions that the bidding document will request when tendering for the procurement of goods and works. In terms of procurement methods to procure goods, works, and infrastructure projects, the preferred method, as I said, is the open competitive bidding, and this open competitive bidding can be tendered at international or national level, depending on the size and nature type of the package that is being tendered. And there you have the list of other procurement methods that, as I said, depending on what the project intends to procure, the geographical situation of the packages, the impact of the economy, the response of the market, etc. So the different procurement methods will be chosen to accommodate to a better procurement outcome and avoid rebiddings. This is a very critical slide for you because this shows you some of the main mistakes that the bidders and the consultants and the contractors do when preparing bids and competing for ADB funded projects. So if the letter of bid is not signed, most likely your bid will be rejected or is signed by a person who is not the authorized signatory in the legal agreement. Or if the bidding document required for bid security or bid security declaration and is not included in your tender or in your bid, that most likely will be a ground for rejection of the bid. Also, if the bid security does not respond to the requirements in terms of amount, in terms of validity, etc. If you are not attaching the legal and technical documents that the bidding documents are requesting, so then depending on the type of the document might be ground for rejection of the bids. If your bid is incomplete or partial bid or conditional bid, that most likely will be a ground for rejection. If there are conflict of interest that have not been disclosed, or if there is a single stage 2 envelope procedure, which is the most preferred method in many countries. You include financial offer in the technical offer for the procurement of the civil works or the plant project, the water treatment plant, if it's single stage 2 envelope procedure, so that will automatically mean the disqualification of your bid. On the other hand, I mentioned that ADB has the oversight role, and particularly my department, and also the Office of Anti-Corruption and Integrity in the ADB. So it's important for you to know that ADB keeps zero tolerance against corruption. And all bidding documents, all procurement packages include the anti-corruption provisions that clearly stipulates what is corruption for ADB, and if that is the case, that in a tender process has happened, what are the remedies that ADB will take and has the right to apply to handle that situation. Okay, now we go to consulting services. Many of you will be interested in consulting services. We hire consulting firms, individual consultants, and staff consultants. Staff consultants is only for ADB to supplement our staffing needs. But under the loans, the grants, and the TA at ADB administered technical assistant projects, we finance the hiring of consulting firms. So an array of consulting services, and also individual consultants. So depending on what the consulting services is, so it will be a consulting firm or a group of individual consultants. It's important that you know that in the new procurement framework in 2017 policy and regulations, the consulting firms can include individual consultants from non-ADB members, meaning that if you need to supplement an area of expertise, you can't include in your technical proposal experts from non-member countries. We will see later a little bit on that. So this is the workflow quickly on how we hired our borrowers hired the consultants. So first, there is need for detailed terms of reference and budget. There is need for an advertisement, which is in the CMS. Most of you will be familiar with that. The CSRN, then expression of interest, the shortlist, then the request for proposal is sent to the shortlisted companies. The shortlisted companies prepare the technical and financial proposals, submit the technical and financial proposals, then the technical envelope is open, evaluated, and then those that meet the requirements will be invited to the public opening of the financial proposal. Final evaluation, ranking of the technical and financial scoring, and then the first ranked company will be invited for negotiation and for an eventual contract award and contract signing and implementation of the contract. In consulting services, there you have the procurement methods, same as we have for the procurement of civil works, infrastructure projects, or supply of goods. For consulting services, we have the 6 methods. And the preferred method is the most competitive one, which is quality and cost-based selection, QCBS. There are other methods there that, again, as per the needs of the project, can be used. What you need to have higher chance to win the contracts in consulting services, first you need to identify which are your entry points, which are your strengths, and build your portfolio. Network with ADB project officers, try to get in touch with and know the employer, in the executing agency or the implementing agency. Understand the context and the background of the project, because it's different. The different regions of Asia and Pacific have such a variety of backgrounds. You can also see if you're a first time trying to to compete, you could also get in agreements with other companies that had already won contracts with ADB in joint ventures as sub-consultants. It's very important that in consulting services, you understand the taxation system in the different countries. And for any bidding process that you participate, if you do not understand a provision of the bidding documents, of the request for proposal, or something is unclear, or please ask. And you have the right to ask for clarifications to the borrower, and the borrower has the obligation to respond to you and to clarify. We have systems for debriefing and complaints and how to report fraud also. So those participants, bidders who have not won the contract have the right to be debriefed on why you did not win the contract. And that is very important because you can understand where were your weak points and the next time do better. If you have complaints, you can complain to ADB and to the borrowers, and there you have the link that you can use to complain. And if you need to report fraud, again, we encourage you to please do so, and the link is there. How to find the information in our website. So in our www.adb.org, work with us. In the main page, you have all these tabs in the upper side, and you click work with us, and you have 3 sites where you can find business opportunities. The Business Center is the first one that I recommend because there you have everything you need. The house, the tools, the bidding documents, the policy, the regulations, the old regime, the new regime, tips, everything you need to understand what is the ADB procurement policy, regulations, and framework. Then the second tab is operational procurement and projects and tenders. And projects and tenders, you click this one and it will take you to all the business opportunities. You can filter by sector, by country, and you can get all the information that you need. In the Business Center, as I said, you get the house, the tools, the do nots, the policy, the regulation, the procedure, guidance notes, the standard bidding documents, and the contractual forms. So for contractors, suppliers, and consultants. So please, we encourage you to go through the website because you will understand what is the procurement framework of ADB. And this is the first one, the Business Center. The second, operational procurement, you have procurement plans of all projects. You have procurement advanced actions when the project is ready, so they can advertise the invitation for bids before even the loan is declared effective. You can also see which are the pre-qualified contractors in the different sectors where you operate, saying the consulting firms that have won contracts, the contractor suppliers that have won contracts. So you really have all this information in operational procurement for the procurement, for goods, works, and services, and for consulting services in your side, right side column. Specific procurement notices, as I said, in the projects and tenders tab, you click tenders, and in the left side column, you can filter by country, by sector, by type of advertisement that you're interested in, etc. Per year. So you have several filters that you can refine your search. So for example, the one in the screen, Vietnam, energy sector, and invitation for bids. So the database will filter all the invitation for bids that are active or closed for Vietnam in energy sector, so you will have all the display, all the IFPs. For consultants, please go to the CMS, to the Consultant Management System of ADB. It's an end-to-end electronic procurement systems where you can get the registration, the fast registration, or full registration when you are shortlisted. And again, you can get here the consulting services recruitment notices, which is the equivalent to the invitation for bids. You can get all the contract awards and filter same per sector, per country, per type amount, etc. So you can get all the consulting services recruitment notices that are active and that you can participate in. It's a good practice. We encourage that you register for alerts, both for consulting services and for procurement of goods and works. For COVID-19, we have a dedicated page, and the first page of our website, what to do, and the first one will be the COVID-19 ADB's response. So you click that and you will have the business opportunities for COVID-19 related packages. Same in the consulting services system in CMS, you can filter also for the COVID related consulting services if you are interested. And then you will have the CSRN notices there. And that's all for me. Thank you so very much. In the last screen, you have also some links that in the link need that can give you more information on the ADB procurement policy and procurement regulations and what are procedures. So thank you very much. And yeah, back to you.
Thank you, Ms. Rohr. Thank you very much for your intervention. It's really interesting to see there are many ways for our companies to work with ADB. We will see you at the end of the webinar for the Q&A session. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Ricardo.
Thank you. In the meantime, I would like to launch the third and last poll. But before we do that, let's go and see what answers we have received so far. In the second poll, we asked you about your public procurement experience with international financial institutions. And let's see the results. So 38% of the companies answered that they have no experience and are seeking new opportunities in these fields, while the main part of the audience, 62%, declared to have a previous experience, of which 24 had encountered some difficulties. We hope that this webinar will help clarify these difficulties and more in general facilitate the participation of Italian companies to the ADB public procurement procedures. Well, let's send out our third and last poll of the webinar. We would like to know which financial instruments would best fit your growth strategy in emerging Asian markets. As usual, you will find different options to choose from. Now, from our headquarters in Rome, Giulio D'Almagro is joining us. Giulio is the head of development financing in CDP. Buongiorno, Giulio.
Buongiorno, buongiorno, Riccardo.
The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Good morning and good evening, everybody. I'm Giulio D'Almagro. I'm responsible for development finance activity towards the private sector in Cassa Depositi e Prestiti, the Development and Cooperation division. Maybe allow me to spend a few words in order to describe who Cassa Depositi e Prestiti is. We are a company majority owned by the Ministry of Finance, 83%, but we do have private shareholders too. We do have a peculiar system of funding. A large part of our funding comes from postal saving of Italian families. And our activity has evolved during the year from Italy-focused institution to a more international export financial institution. Okay, just a few words on our history. As you can see, we've been around for a very long time, more than 170 years. Financing at first mostly Italian local authorities and the infrastructure development of Italy. But then in the last 20 years, we increased our activity in equity. We built up a quite significant equity portfolio, especially in Italian strategic companies, in social housing financing, in export financing, in partnership with the Italian export credit agency, SACE. And then last but not least, we've been given by law the role of the Italian institution for development and for financial development and cooperation. So who we are Development Financing Department. We are a new department of CDP focused on financing and investing for the sustainable development of emerging and developing countries. And how we do it is by leveraging on the experience and the large toolbox that we have in CDP. So long-term financing, project and structural finance, fund investment, direct equity, guarantees, so on and so forth. So we do have a large spectrum of potential tools we can apply in our development finance activity. Okay, in terms of where we can operate in our as Italian institution for development and cooperation, as you can see, all the, I think 143 now OECD Development Assistance Committee countries, all the blue colored countries in the map here. There are a number of countries in dark blue, which are priority for us. 8 of them are based in Asia. In terms of sectors, as you can see in the usual suspects in terms of our priority sectors. So I'll briefly name the financial institution in order for them to on-lend to micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. So it's indirect financing for the development of small and medium-sized enterprises. Energy, in particular renewable energy, food chain and agribusiness, infrastructures, both heavy infrastructures like transportation infrastructure, energy infrastructures, and social infrastructures. Manufacturing is, I would say, manufacturing when there is a high impact in terms of job creation. And then we have 3 cross-cutting themes: climate change, for sure, youth employment, and gender equality. So those are 3 cross-cutting themes around all the sectors I mentioned before. In terms of the structure, how we operate, I mean, I will first of all underline 2 main criteria. The first criteria we have to comply with is co-financing. When we operate in the private sector, we have a constraint in terms of how much we can finance over a transaction. We cannot go above 50%. So that means that for us it's of paramount importance to find partners like the Asian Development Bank in order to co-finance or co-invest in transactions that we deem as particularly interesting in terms of impact. There is a possibility to finance all by ourselves only when we talk about an Italian company. So that's the only case where we can finance a transaction, of course, in an emerging and developing countries without other co-financiers or co-investors. And then the second criteria we have to follow, we have to comply with, is the intermediation. When we want to support micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, we need to be intermediated. So we have to go through either a microfinance institution or a local bank or even a fund, as we will see later. In terms of structure, we have here for basic examples of how we work. So corporate could be plain vanilla corporate financing. It could be more structured transactions with collaterals of some kind. We can do project finance, especially in infrastructure and the energy sector. We can finance, as I said before, financial institutions, and we can invest in equity. Until now, we've been investing in funds. We are allowed to invest also in direct equity, but we haven't done any direct investment for now. In terms of transaction, this is just a list of recent transactions. It could be useful just to focus on the fact that we are, in terms of tickets, we quite, let me say, size agnostic, in the sense that we can go for large tickets. You can see here 70, 50. We hope to close a very large project finance transaction where we will potentially take a ticket of up to 250 million euro. This is probably on the really high side, high range of potential intervention. But we can go for very small tickets. You can see here, well, 2.53 is probably a bit lower than a normal threshold, but 5 million is a ticket we can consider. You can see here Italy transactions is just because those are investment in developing countries by Italian companies. So we target them as lending in Italy. Okay, I'll spend a few words on a number of case study. I just mentioned some I think most interesting peculiarities of such transactions. The first one is in Ghana, financing to Ghana Cocoa Board. And this is a transaction where we did co-finance together with other institutions and especially African Development Bank. So we, of course, the regional multilateral development bank is for us a perfect partner, given his expertise in the area, given his the presence of the boot on the ground that we don't have. So we try to look at co-financing or co-investing with this kind of institution like yours. So this one was with African Development Bank and other DFIs. We took a tranche of 44 US millions out of a very large transaction. Significant development goals. We did like the fact that this financing had a significant impact in terms of jobs and in terms of supporting the value chain inside the country of the cocoa. And of course, we identified a counterpart that we consider as idoneous in terms of robustness of his financials. Another example of activity, here we have a number of funds. One is an equity fund. Africa Renewable Energy Fund is an equity fund where we did invest 35 million euro with a goal to support the creation of renewable energy projects in the sub-Saharan region. And the other two examples are green bond funds, so debt funds. Those are two funds where there is a significant intervention of IFC as promoter, IFC has a technical assistance program in favor of the issuance of green bond. And we invested respectively 50 and 70 million euro in the two funds, with the goal of to develop green finance markets and of course combat climate change. And the last example I will present to you is a manufacturing plant in South Africa. This is a co-financing together with IFC, 50 million ticket euro for us. In this case, the target was to support job creation and technology transfer in South Africa. So those are three different examples, three different sectors of our activity. And then finally, I'll spend a few words on blending. We are not allowed to use our own funds for concessional finance and technical assistance. Cannot provide grants of any kind with our own funding. But we can, and we are partnering with institutions like the Italian ministries, like the European Commission, like Green Climate Fund, in order to combine our own resources with donor resources. And I'll present you a particularly interesting example is the activity we're doing together with the European Commission inside the external investment plan. We presented together with other partners programs to the European Commission. Three programs were approved. Two of them are focusing on support to the growth of African companies, Inclusify and Archipelagos, and one is focusing on the renewable energy, providing liquidity lines for renewable energy projects. Now the external investment plan was focusing on Africa, so this kind of activities could be performed only in Africa. Now, and with a new round of European blending, we could consider proposing this kind of programs also in other areas, like of course Asia. Thank you.
Grazie Giulio. Thank you very much. And stay with us. The Q&A session will begin right away, as soon as we connect our experts from Manila, from Vienna, and from England. Thank you again. While our colleagues join us, I would like to remind you that the presentation you have seen today will be available on the website we built for this event. In a very few days, you will also find the full registration of the webinar. And now I would open the Q&A session. I would like to remind all the speakers to answer the questions briefly, so we can get through all of them. We are waiting our experts in our LED wall. Here we go. Thank you, everybody. So I go through the questions. The first one is for Mr. Abdukayumov. The question is, in your opinion, what are the main difficulties encountered by companies in public procurement procedures? And there are any initiative by ADB to make this procedure easier? Rastam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ricardo. I think maybe I'll start with just clarifying that under ADB finance projects, there are two types of procurement broadly. One is where ADB procures, and another is where the borrower procures. So ADB procures only consulting services, and as Janina already shared, there are 6 types of selection methods, and they are not very complex. Actually, we are trying to introduce a limit on number of pages so that all submissions are very short and easy to evaluate. So I do not see many kind of issues in the consulting services, because that's very kind of easy to evaluate, and if there is something missing, so then there will be a certain kind of approaches in the evaluation. The scores will be reduced, for example, for missing CV or signed CV. But then borrowers, they procure both consulting services, but also very complex goods and works, and more importantly, EPC contracts. Right there, of course, there will be different requirements because of complexities. And what we see based on our experience, many bidders do not really comply with all the requirements which are clearly stated in the bidding documents, right? So therefore, it's actually the responsibility of the bidders to properly kind of familiarize themselves, and if they have any questions, ask the executing agency, what do you mean by this, if you are not very kind of sure what kind of documents are expected from our side. Also, we understand that many companies, they have dedicated staff who prepare bids, but actually they are not involved in implementation of these contracts if they win. Right, so there is probably a bit of a disconnect between those who are implementing contracts and those who are preparing bids. But we are trying to simplify. For example, if there is a requirement for bid security, previously, say maybe 4 years ago, before 2018, even minor deviation from that requirement basically would be a ground to reject the bid. Now we indicate that those minor deviations can be rectified. So if the amount is, a few dollars less than required, because sometimes it's exchange rate fluctuation, or the duration, the validity is a few days less. So it is allowed to rectify by requesting bidders to submit the proper document, right? So we are working in this direction, but answering the question whether ADB has initiative to make the processes easier, I would say we already have multiple different approaches to procurement. So it's not just one process which we will have to simplify. Depending on complexity, we can use 1 stage, 2-stage bidding, we can use 1 envelope or 2 envelopes. And our purpose is actually not to make everything easier, but to make these processes more appropriate to the complexity. So we do not use a one-size-fits-all approach, and basically we use more fit for purpose. And how we do it, it's during project preparation, we have to analyze what are potential market players, depending on the size of the contract, and then what is the executing agency's capacity? Can they do implementation of these contracts, or it's too complex for them? And then also to see if there are any kind of bad examples in the past that we should not repeat, right? And our procedures are mostly harmonized with all other multilateral development banks, and we continue harmonizing further. For example, in consulting services, we introduce so-called framework agreements, where we do the selection of X number of consulting firms or individuals for a particular area of expertise, and then those will be kind of confirmed for the next 2-3 years. And when there is a need for actual inputs, it's just a letter which will be sent to them, requiring them to confirm if they are available, and they can start working from next day. So there will be no selection process once the framework agreement is finalized. For goods, we always had, and we also encourage to use request for quotations or shopping procedure if the value is very small and goods are not very complex. In civil works, they are normally always much more complex. But what we can use is one-stage bidding process rather than two-stage. But again, as I said, it's the borrowers who do procurement, and in many countries, they already have established practices in several sectors, in given sectors, which they cannot deviate from. So, but we are assessing all these during project preparation. I think the most complex is for everybody, for bidders, for executing agencies, and for EAs is EPC contracts, plant contracts, which involves design, which involves a lot of licenses, and the bidders have to demonstrate previous experience in many different specific activities. There, you see, it's very difficult to simplify the processes because, for example, if it is construction of a power plant or, say, the metro or water treatment plant, the documents by definition would be very complex. The employer's requirements could be a couple of 100 pages, and bidders are expected to respond to each of these requirements and put it in a very kind of transparent way so that all bids could be compared on the same basis. And so we understand that's sometimes complex, but this is the rule of the game. So the more complex is a contract, the more complex will be requirements. I would just say, for example, in the power plant, we usually required only experience, say, to demonstrate experience that the contract has been completed for a similar type of power plant. Now, many executing agencies would require demonstration or evidence that those power plants had X hours of operation after they had been commissioned, because there are many plants in the world which had been completed, handed over, but did not work because of different issues. Sometimes because there is no gas or there is no other material which is required to run the plant. So you see, that becomes very complicated. But my main point is we already have different tools, and it's just a matter to select the right tool to make sure that these bidding procedures are acceptable, well understood by all potential market participants. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rams. It's really interesting to understand all the facility that Adb provided to support enterprises attending to the procedure, the competition procedure. Now I would like to pass to the green energy sector. A question is for Mr. Nam. In which technologies are Southeast Asian governments projected to be investing in most to support the energy transition? Mr. Nam.
Thank you for the question. I think it is just not limited to only the Southeast Asian countries, but we are covering all this for the Asia and the Pacific region. What I just mentioned in my slides in the presentation, that we are covering all types of the clean energy technologies. We are, whatever that the government is requesting, from the proven technologies perspective. So, at the moment that most support that we are doing is the solar, but it's not only limited, but we are doing all the small hydro, as well as the different types of all the even wind. And then, we are looking at then hydro, but not larger hydro at the moment because it's not much of that one. But we are also looking at the early stage of the, like a geothermal is also part of it. And then we also early stage, but we are looking at some of this kind of, floating solar, floating wind, and marine energy, as well as waste energy. And we're doing the, more or less a feasibility study and kind of looking at that aspect. So it covers all the renewable technology. But in addition, that we are looking at also energy efficiency from the demand side, and in particular on the residential sector, as well as the buildings and offices, industries. And in the we are again, it's early stage, but we are looking at on the to meet the more Paris Agreement, or as a renewable, so to say, a clean energy carrier, like we're using the like a green carbon capture utilization and storage technology, as well as to a very early stage, but we are conducting the studies and feasibility study market analysis on the green hydrogen as well. So I will stop here on that one. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Nam. I have one more question for you. I kindly ask you, all the speakers, to go briefly in the answer, so we have time. We have more or less 10 minutes to the end of the webinar. So the second question for you is, given that in the Southeast Asia region is planning to spend $140 billion per year in clean energy in the next few years, why ADB is projecting to lend only $5 billion per year? This is the question just arrived from the audience.
Well, this is again, covering all the, when you look at that, ADB is the only one portion that they can contribute, through this clean energy development among the others. I mean, we're also collaborating with the World Bank and also from the European Bank, but the thing is, the ADB, when you look at the ADB's last year's overall portfolio, this is about 30 billion. So we're not, covering all this. So from there, we can, it is still like a 5 billion of, that is to what we are estimating. So it is not that, we can, I don't know, this is the estimated figure of 140 billion, but, ADB itself from the, can cover the 5 billion. And I think this is still about 30% of the ADB's portfolio in terms of the program.
Okay, thanks again. So the next question is for Michael Agnala for the transport sector. How does ADB design and manage projects in the road infrastructure sector? Michael.
Thank you so much. So I think, like I mentioned earlier, you have seen the change in demand for road sector. I mean, it's still the dominant sector. So it's really fundamental to ensure that ADB continues to support countries who still need to build roads to address a number of development issues. So what we actually do at the start, the planning stage, is to ensure we align our road sector pipelines with government's development agenda. Most of them is aligned with SDGs, Paris Agreement, and others. At the same time, those pipelines are aligned to ADB's own operational priorities. So, for example, in order to address remaining poverty, it is still essential to ensure access to communities that are in rural areas, particularly in countries in South Asia where the accessibility is poor. At the same time, we have to look at other thematic issues. So climate change is a big issue for most countries now. And again, we're trying to find ways on how we can embed climate change, both in terms of mitigation and adaptation, so that these are addressed more properly in the projects. Now, once these projects are identified, then they will normally go into country partnership strategies, which is the formal agreement with governments. And these actually are available for all of you to review. You can just go to the ADB websites and you can look at the areas of assistance in the country partnership strategies for each country to give you direction of not just road sector investments, but also other investments going forward. Then once we reach to the design and preparation phase, normally we shall have some kind of technical assistance where we have technical expertise that will assist project teams to actually prepare these projects and ensure that there's compliance with ADB processes, including environmental safeguards and embedding innovations in projects. But like I mentioned here, I know that we're running out of time. The nature of assistance is changing. So previously, most projects have been project-based, but going forward, we're increasingly piloting performance-based contracts for roads, for example. And going up to 2030, we're looking at probably area maintenance contracts for roads. This will be new areas for our development member countries. So what we're doing now is assisting them in developing their capacities ensuring that they have the right policies, technologies, and procedures to enable transition to this kind of projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. The next question is for Ms. Rohr. In which cases is contractor pre-qualification required for public procurement projects in which ADB is involved?
Thank you for the question. We have to distinguish the pre-qualification that is different from the bidding process, first of all. And the pre-qualification option is optional. So the borrower, when designing the project and the procurement arrangements and defining the packages, the procurement packages, will think about the fit for purpose basis if the pre-qualification is fit for the purpose of the project. And typically, there will be pre-qualification when the nature and the complexity of the contracts are such that the value of the pre-qualification stage and process could create in the process, and this exceeds the cost and the associated risks of running a pre-qualification stage before a bidding tendering. So the contractors, the bidders, will have to pre-qualify if there is a pre-qualification notice. And I want to clarify where is appropriation. First, when there is large or complex contracts, for example, custom design equipment, complex industrial plants, complex IT systems, or high-level technology packages, and also, as Rustan mentioned, very large, complex, turnkey design and build contracts, dams, power plants that are really complex. So in this case, might be advisable to use a pre-qualification so the bidders, they will understand that only capable, eligible bidders will be pre-qualified and will compete for the actual bidding process. Thank you.
Thank you, Janina. Now I would address the last question for Giulio. The question is, what are the market terms of financing under the scope of development finance of CDP? Does it envisage low interest funding and or grants? Giulio.
Thank you, Riccardo. No, probably it has to be stressed that when we use our own funding, it is at market rates. When we can blend with donors financing, then we can provide some form of, let me say, concessionality, so lower interest rates, and some form of grants. This is the case of technical assistance. We cannot provide technical assistance with our own funds, but we can do it when we manage funds of donors, like the case of the European Commission I mentioned before, with the external investment plan programs.
Thank you, Giulio. Well, we still have some questions left. We will make sure we get back to you in the next days. We will post our answers on the events website and notify to all the audience about the publishing of the answers, so all the participants can have a look at them as soon as they are online. Well, I would like to thank all of our speakers for your availability. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Goodbye, everybody. Hoping to organize a live event for the next occasion. Thank you once again. Arrivederci.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Now, let's see the result from the third and the final poll. We asked which financial instruments would best fit your growth strategy in emerging Asian markets. more than half of the audience answered that the debt facility, so loans facility, are the main financial instruments interested. So let me say that also the other financial instrument could be important for our companies, such as technical assistance, guarantee, and equity investment. Well, the webinar has come to an end, and I would like to thank you for your participation. We have had an incredible response, and we are very happy for that. I would like to remind you that the dialogue with us does not stop here. You can get in touch by visiting the webpage created for this event.
Thank you, Riccardo. Finally, I would really like to thank all our colleagues from ADB that join us, and all those who worked for the organization of this webinar. I would like to mention Marie for all the team of ADB that worked with us. I would also like to have a final thank to Mr. Michael, Gentile, Schiavoni for the production, and our colleagues from the communication and events unit for their precious collaboration. We hope to hear soon from all of you. Thanks for your attention and have a great day. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.